It's Sunday, July 13th, 2025, and unfortunately, it looks like we could see a flooding risk return to central Texas in a big way today, with a lot of the areas which received catastrophic flooding only about a week ago forecasted to receive once again huge amounts of rain, nearing anywhere between 8 to 10 inches, especially down here in that San Antonio and Austin region. And this would all happen very early today in the morning hours, even before sunrise, which could lead to a very catastrophic situation unfolding. And then another thing to note is that even up here near Dallas-Fort Worth and probably a little bit east of Dallas-Fort Worth along this line, bringing loads of rainfall, we could see once again up to 6 inches of rainfall up here. And it looks like the flooding risk will continue pretty much all the way through today, with those storms moving at a dangerously slow rate and also bringing loads of rainfall at the same time. And this risk would push a bit more southward down here, with another area receiving widespread 2 to 4 inches of rain. And it looks like this threat would continue all the way into Monday morning, with an isolated area of increased concern down here south of San Antonio, possibly receiving all the way up to 7 inches of rain. And what's going to be causing all of this is a boundary laid out by a mesoscale convective vortex, which is going to be all the way up in Oklahoma, which is going to drape all the way across the state of Texas. And what it appears will happen is that a mesoscale convective vortex will actually form down here just northwest of San Antonio. And unfortunately, it looks like it will stay put and not really move at all and just bring tons of rain to this area, which was unfortunately just devastated by those floods on 4th of July weekend only about a week ago, before it finally moves a little bit eastward in the late afternoon today and then decides to redevelop actually back here in San Antonio once again. And then it will decide to move up and away late tonight and into Monday morning, all the way up into Oklahoma. So unfortunately, a somewhat similar setup to what brought that catastrophic flooding only about a week ago, except this time the mesoscale convective vortex is not going to be the remnants of a tropical storm and should only stick around for about a day and not 4 days like the other one did. Other areas which could see flooding today are going to be up here in the northeast to mid-Atlantic. Anywhere within this slight risk could see some isolated areas of anywhere between 2 to 4 inches of rain. Anywhere within this large marginal risk, which spans all the way from the southern plains all the way up into the northeast, could receive anywhere from 1 to 2 inches of rain today. And then up here in this slight risk highlighted down here from Texas into Oklahoma and Arkansas, we could see up here in Oklahoma and Arkansas some isolated areas of 3 to 4 inches of rain. And then back here in New Mexico, this looks like it's a very conditional risk, but in that slight risk back here, be prepared for anywhere between 2 to 3 inches of rain. And of course, we have our central Texas area, which we just covered, which could receive dangerous amounts of rainfall, possibly even being up to around 10 inches. And then for general severe weather, this looks like to be about the calmest day we've had in over a week. We do have a pretty conditional risk of severe weather down here in the southern plains, stretching up into the Mississippi River Valley, highlighted by a marginal risk, then another marginal risk of severe weather up here in the mid-Atlantic and northeast. I do think this marginal risk of severe weather could possibly be extended down into central Texas, because I do think some of those storms could be capable of bringing some severe gusts in excess of 60 miles an hour. And speaking of gusts, that is literally going to be our only risk today. Our only risk highlighted by the Storm Prediction Center is going to be for some severe winds. So in those two risk areas we just talked about, pretty much anywhere within them, there is the conditional threat for some damaging winds in excess of 60 miles an hour, with the highest potential being up here in the mid-Atlantic to northeast. And I think this risk back up here in the Mississippi River Valley and the southern plains is going to be pretty conditional, but still be prepared for some damaging winds if you're in that risk area. And taking a second look at our southern plains view of simulated reflectivity, we see that a couple of clusters down here in our storms bringing that dangerous rainfall to central Texas could possibly have some severe gusts. And then pretty much any cluster up here along what is going to be a cold front and some redevelopment along a mesoscale convective vortex up here in the Mississippi River Valley could have a couple of storm clusters which could pose that threat for 60-mile-an-hour damaging winds. And the threat for that would peak in the mid to late afternoon today. And then of course, as the low-level jet kicks in right before evening is when there also could be a increased threat of some severe storms back up here in the Mississippi River Valley in that Missouri, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas meeting point. Here is a simulated reflectivity activity from our mid-Atlantic to northeastern risk area. And it's going to be a very similar story to the past couple of days where we just have a moist and modestly unstable environment with some storms being initiated in the afternoon hours by some troughing and then some frontal activity, which could cluster and bring some damaging 60-mile-an-hour winds to the region. And here's a different look from a little bit more northward. And it's pretty much going to be the same thing up here all the way up into the US-Canada border, where there could be some damaging 60-mile-an-hour gusts. Here are our 500 millibar winds, and we will see a large area of troughing up here in the northern US moving through, which will help to initiate some storms back in our northeastern to mid-Atlantic risk area. Then we see a bit of a short wave, which kind of digs all the way into Oklahoma and northern Texas, which will bring some of the forcing for our storms down here, which will bring that likely very high flooding risk and then some 60-mile-an-hour damaging gusts. And then we're taking another look at the tropics and the Gulf. There has been a 20% chance of formation highlighted by the National Hurricane Center. Now, the actual chance of formation is very unlikely, but there is going to be a very primed environment out there, and there are a couple of models which are hinting at some development. And here are our European ensembles, and we can see here starting on Wednesday an area of possible development right off of the coast of Florida, and it's actually hinting at a possibly weak tropical depression forming. And then moving into Thursday, we see pretty much the same story, and then even Friday and all the way up pretty much into the weekend that week, we see a lot of the same stuff hinting at even a possibly weak to strong tropical storm forming, which could pretty much pose a threat to anywhere in the Gulf if it were to form. But currently the threat for this is very conditional, and that's about as far as we can see out into Friday this week. And here's a look at the sea surface temperatures in the Gulf, and they are going to be absolutely scorching with pretty much the hottest temperatures of anywhere of possible development from anywhere in the Atlantic to even the Gulf being available to this storm if it were to develop. And even our ocean heat content is going to be fairly high in this region, so our ocean temperatures and ocean heat content are going to be very conducive for development. And starting on the 16th or Wednesday, when it looks like this storm could have the first chance of forming, we actually see an area of pretty much no shear out here in the Gulf where it would form, and it looks like this trend would continue all the way up into the 20th, and even where the storm is forecasted to go if it were to form pretty much anywhere from the eastern coast of Texas all the way up into the Florida Panhandle, there's going to be a very muted area of shear. So it looks like this environment for this storm is going to be very conducive. And the last thing to look at is going to be moisture. Starting on the 16th, we're going to see a pretty moist area enter the Gulf. So even this storm would have a very moist environment to work with. So in summary, although the chance of this storm actually forming is pretty low, it's going to have a very conducive environment to work with. So it were to form, it could have the ability to even become pretty strong.